With millions of people fleeing the fighting in Ukraine and arriving in foreign countries, the United Nations is warning of the risks they face of being trafficked and exploited. Of the more than 3 million people who have now fled Ukraine since Russia's invasion in February, the vast majority are women and children. Many men have stayed to fight. Germany is now hosting nearly 200,000 Ukrainian refugees. DW's Mariana Evanstein spoke to one woman named Katerina, who safely arrived in Berlin with her children.
It's not about leave Kiev, it's about to run and escape. As far as on the 24th of February, it was clear that the war started. And we stayed at home for 2 days. And it was the most unforgettable days in my life. I had panic attacks and I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. I understood that I have to save the life of my child, my life, my mother's life. And we ran, we drove 4 days to Poland border, and on the 4th of March we were lucky to come to Berlin.
Can you maybe describe for us a little bit about what this 4-day journey was like?
These 4 days were the most scaring because when you stay in your apartment you have a bomb shelter. When you are driving, there is nothing. So that's why it was very scaring, because you never know what's going to happen with you. But I clearly knew that I have no chance to stay. If I stay, I have 0 chances to stay alive. I have to run. I have to use this chance.
And why did you and your family decide that you would stay in Berlin?
When such kind of critical situation happens, the first thing that you have in your mind is where you have friends, where you have relatives to whom you can call and ask for help. One of the person, we are very lucky, we have a friend for many years in Berlin, and I called him and said that we have to run. Can you please help us? Can we stay in your house for, I don't know how much time, for some period of time? And he told, sure, you can come, we will be happy to see, and we will help you in everything that you need.
Do you have hope that you'll someday be able to return back home?
I try to stay optimistic. My father has just sent me the video from my village. I live 10 kilometers away from Kiev. This is absolutely peaceful area. Nothing except private houses are there. And half of this area is bombed. There is nothing. That's ruin. I don't know. We hope so. We all want to go home. We are so grateful to everyone who helps us, but we want to go home. My child asks me every day, Mom, when we are going to go home? And yesterday he asked me, Mom, we are not going home. Do I still have a home? I don't know what to say.
Well, for more on the situation of the refugees, let's bring in Joung-ah Ghedini-Williams. She's with the United Nations Refugee Agency, the UNHCR. Well, you've visited the areas bordering Ukraine. What are the preeminent dangers facing refugees right now?
I think right now what we're seeing is that there are so many complications on top of the initial needs. So, of course, there's shelter, food, water, medical supplies that are needed. But I think as the last segment showed, there is tremendous tragedy, loss, suffering, and probably trauma. There's a great deal of trauma that we will have to be able to support. And then add on top of that, the fact that 90% of the refugees fleeing are women and children. And while we've seen such a warm outpouring of support and welcome, among that, there is the threat of predators, of people trying to exploit this situation and exploit these women and children.
Okay, in case of the traffickers preying on refugees, is there a pattern emerging? What kind of cases are you seeing there?
So far, we don't have the comprehensive evidence. What we are seeing are anecdotal incidents of reports of behavior that we know is very much of the type that we've seen in previous occasions with exploitation, abuse, gender-based violence, and also, as you mentioned, trafficking. So what we're trying to do is to support the national governments across the region and further into other parts of Europe and beyond to ensure that there is a coordinated response and that also there is the information and the awareness among the refugees themselves so that they do have a heightened sense of the risk that may be involved.
And what about the situation inside Ukraine? There's hundreds of thousands of internally displaced people there. Do they face the same dangers?
I think we fear what may happen in the coming days and weeks as we've seen cities that we thought were safe havens, it seems, are not necessarily safe. And as you mentioned, we estimate that at least 2 million people may be internally displaced or on the move inside the country. So in addition to the 3.3 million who have become refugees in neighboring countries, we could be looking at potentials of many more millions becoming refugees and, yes, facing similar protection risks.
You have visited the areas bordering Ukraine. You're aware of the situation of the refugees there. What about logistics and the flow of aid to these refugees? Is that going to plan?
It is definitely scaling up across the board. So the national governments have done a tremendous job of organizing the initial response. UNHCR and other international organizations and UN agencies are ramping up everywhere, not only in the surrounding countries, but also inside Ukraine, sending in supplies, sending in staff members. So we are definitely scaling up. I think what we're afraid of is, are we going to be able to keep up with the numbers of people that are flowing out of the country and that will be in need of greater and greater support?
Joung-ah Ghedini-Williams, Head of Global Communications at the UN's refugee agency, UNHCR. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.